Hello and welcome to the Podawakens. My name is Jordan. With me today, as we discuss the state of Star Wars 2024, is Ron. How are you today, Ron?
I'm good, man. Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today. Some good, some not so good, but it's been a little bit since we've just kind of chopped it up on the current happenings in the Star Wars universe. So I'm excited to get into all of it with you today.
Yeah, and there's a lot to talk about, and more stuff has just continued to creep up since we were planning to do this episode. like, I think it was we were talking about doing a Skeleton Crew preview, and then that day, I think the Kinberg news
Hmm.
dropped, and I was like, okay, we're adding this. we're adding
Yeah.
this. And then, just before we started recording, literally like an hour before, we have the news of the 2020, one of the 2026 movies coming off the schedule. So we'll talk about that. I also got some responses I shared on all of our socials. Like, tell me your thoughts on the state of Star Wars in the year 2024, the year of our Lord Sidious 2024. Let us know your thoughts. And we have some responses to that. I did a poll on Twitter, which I think is the only one that has the poll option really anyway. So
Hmm.
I'll read what the poll was, and I'll also read some of the replies from like Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky now and all
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
we're on Blue Sky, by the way. Now you can find us over
Yes.
there.
Yes. Same. For me, it's the same handle as
Yes.
X, formerly Twitter. I'm sure for you as well,
At
and the
Pod
shows.
Awakens. Yes. Yeah, I try to keep the shows very consistent. If I have one like let's say Elseworlds. Elseworlds was available as just Elseworlds, but I kept it as
Mhm.
Elseworlds DC fan, which was what it was on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, just to keep that consistent. I've also been updating the link trees. So the link trees have Blue Sky socials on there as well. Um, yeah, and I've been putting up, I put up a graphic a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, of what you can expect from this show. And this is kind of part of the state of the Star Wars. I talked about it on the last episode. What you can expect from this show starting December. We will be doing Skeleton Crew every week, as is typical. In late, once Skeleton Crew wraps up, our Bad Batch binge with Logan is going to start dropping then. I'm going to be starting to record those this weekend with the Tales of the Jedi coverage, which will actually come out before Skeleton Crew. I'm going to get that up as soon as I can. Um, but we're going to start recording the Bad Batch weekly in the coming weeks here. And then those will be dropping after Skeleton Crew, because the only other thing we have is Andor Season 2 next year.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be doing the road to season 2 of Andor. And the way we're going to do it is not episode by episode. We're going to take those episode arcs that they have, and we're just going to spend an episode, each week talking about one of those arcs as we build up to April 22nd, which is when Andor season 2 will premiere. Also, around that time, we're going to have Celebration news from Japan, and we're going to have an episode recapping that.
Hmm.
And then Andor season 2 coverage as we continue there. So that's what's coming up on this podcast as we go. Is next year will kind of be an emptier year, right?
Hmm.
With only the one show, unless if this is going to be part of the topics on this episode as well. Unless if there's like a surprise show or drop, animated series or another Tales of. Those are something I could see being revealed at
Yeah.
Celebration and releasing later in the year or
Mhm.
something. So
It won't be anything live action. There would just
no,
we would
no,
know via the trades by now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right, so I guess let's talk about the big news about Kinberg, and then we'll go into how that kind of sets up the rest of the state of Star Wars, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I have the articles here. Deadline, I think, had the exclusive, and then we got more information from Hollywood Reporter, etc. But Deadline put out, this was on, I think this was like not long after I had recorded the other episode that I just did.
Mhm.
So it was last week, November 7th. And Lucasfilm has closed a deal with Simon Kinberg to develop a trilogy of Star Wars films. Kinberg will write the trio and produce them with Lucasfilm chief Kathleen Kennedy. They've heard this will comprise of episodes 10 through 12 of the Skywalker saga that began with George Lucas's 1977 film. Insiders disputed my intel that they will continue that storyline, saying this will instead be a new saga and sit alongside percolating Star Wars projects with James Mangold, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, Taika Waititi, and Donald Glover. As usual, Lucasfilm and Disney are not commentating. Hollywood Reporter put out a very similar article, but specified that they also hear it is not episodes 10 through 12, and this is a separate trilogy with separate characters. Then we had I was reading Bespin Bulletin, which has info and news and stuff, but they were hearing from Jeff Snyder that Rey is supposed to be in this movie almost as a Obi-Wan Kenobi type role. And then there was a Hollywood Reporter article that came out saying Rey is like the most coveted weapon in Lucasfilm's arsenal for these next films, and that everybody kind of wants her. The Rey movie, the Kinberg trilogy. Then there was, at one point, right, there was the rumor of Helen Mirren playing an older Rey in one of these movies or something strange like that. But it seems like that. I mean, I'll throw it to you in a second, Ron, but my first thought when I got this news was, oh, they're going to reshape the Stephen Knight movie, the Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy movie, the Rey movie, as he'll be the new writer, and they're just going to expand and make 2 more movies, and that'll be the trilogy. Insiders are saying, no, that's not the case, that it is 2 separate projects that are vying for Rey, and maybe maybe in her movie she's more front and center, and then like she's more Obi-Wan role in the trilogy, etc., etc. So that's a lot of info to dump on people right away. So I just want to get your thoughts, Ron. What was your thoughts when this came across your screen?
So when we get to the Disney Plus side of things, I'm going to be a lot more positive. So I don't want to seem like this is just going to be a dump session the entire podcast. That's not going to be the case. But with that being said, it frustrated the hell out of me. And you said, is it going to be its own trilogy? Is it going to be, a re-amalgamation of the Rey movie? I don't even think they know at this point. I think they probably did the same thing they do with all of these movies. They said, oh, here's a creative that we want to be involved in Star Wars somehow. Let's just ink them to a deal and see what happens in the years to come. And I feel like this has just been the perpetual state of Star Wars and Lucasfilm as it pertains to movies since after The Force Awakens?
After Last Jedi. I'll tell you,
yes,
there is a big shift after The Last Jedi on projects that were being worked on that have stopped being worked on, right? Because we had they were so high on The Last Jedi that they're like, we're going to give this guy a whole trilogy. The movie comes out, is divisive as hell, and they have to keep saying, we're still working on it, but right now he's at Netflix making a bunch of movies, and when he's done that, we will make those for sure. And it's like, I doubt that's actually going to happen.
But and then they bring in Colin Trevorrow for the third one, and then he's out, and then they bring J.J. Abrams back, and it's just been one thing after another. The Kevin Feige movie, the Taika Waititi movie, Rogue Squadron. It's just been one thing after another with Lucasfilm, with announcing these movies, biting off more than they can chew, and then having to do this. Some of them aren't going to happen. Some of them are being and nothing ends up being what they say it's going to be. So my first reaction to this was, these movies aren't going to happen. That's my reaction, unfortunately, to everything. Now, I feel like the real tipping point for me, and I gave them a lot of rope with this. I could deal with the Kevin Feige and the Taika Waititi stuff and all that, but we got this batch of movies they announced, right? With the Rey movie, Mando and Grogu, the Mangold movie, in the Thrawn movie. The Rey movie has lost more writers than there are like days in the week at this point. Mando and Grogu, we'll give it to him. That one finished production for the most part, at least
Mm-hmm.
principal photography. We know that much. But then we've got this Thrawn movie and this Mangold movie that we haven't really heard anything about in the year plus since they've announced it. And instead of that, we're getting more movie announcements. Meanwhile, we don't even have a time frame of when these other 4 movies that they announced are coming out. And as we saw today, the date they kind of soft earmarked for that Rey movie is out. It's Ice Age 6 now. So
Yeah, they put it on ice. They put it
yeah,
on ice.
maybe it'll be a Star Wars crossover movie, and that's what they're going for here. No, but I'm frustrated. I have very little to no faith in Lucasfilm on the movie side right now, and it's really weird because, and they've even made mention of this in one of these articles recently. I don't remember off the top of my head, but just kind of comparing and contrasting the difference of like the Disney Plus TV side and how things are running much more smoothly on that side, even if the projects themselves, the way they're received, like the Acolyte was received how it was received. We were kind of lukewarm on it. It was very divisive, but the point remains that it hit the date. We've got Skeleton Crew, we've got Andor coming. It feels like there's a fluidity there that hasn't been there on the movie side in literally 8 years. And it's really frustrating. So that's kind of where I'm at on it.
I think I was there a few years ago, and I actually think I'm going to come across more positive because it shocked me, I'll say, right? Like my first reaction to this news was hell yeah. Like a new trilogy and one guy writing all 3. Like that will alleviate so many of the issues that I feel could be heading towards Lucasfilm and have been heading towards Lucasfilm for quite some time, starting with The Last Jedi, which I love that movie. But when you have JJ doing his thing, Ryan writes a script, right? And then that goes in a whole different direction. And then Colin was going to take it to continue that path, but they have to course correct because they didn't think the fan reaction was there. So then they get JJ back, and then he kind of force corrects a bit to Rise of Skywalker, which I still enjoy as well. I love all 3 of those movies, but are they cohesive? No, they are not. And I can say that openly as a fan of those movies, that there are so many things I look back at with that trilogy that I say they missed the mark on. And one thing they missed the mark on is having consistent writers. Mm-hmm. Another thing they missed the mark on is having Luke, Leia, and Han have a scene together.
Yeah.
In the Falcon, which, look, we didn't know we were going to lose Carrie Fisher a year later, but once that happened, there's no going back. We can't have those 3 together again, and that hurts, right? Especially once they kill off Han, then you're like, there really is no way. And then they kill off Luke, and you're like, there's really no way that we can do this.
That's the annoying part of it. You can't even
kill off
give them
Leia.
Yeah, you can't even give them the excuse of Carrie passed away because they killed Han Solo in the first movie before she even passed. So that was just a whiff on their part. And I loved Force Awakens, by the way, and I thought his death was awesome. But those things aren't mutually exclusive. I could think he had a really good ending, and I really liked that movie. While basically just echoing your point, you liked the movies, but there was still a lot wrong with them.
Yeah, the droids. I love BB-8, but R2 and 3PO needed to be more front and center. If you're going to continue the Skywalker saga, those characters were so instrumental to that saga. And I'm glad 3PO got his shine in Rise of Skywalker, but R2 is absent in all 3 of those movies. Yeah. He's barely in them, and it sucks. Now, if we're talking about going forward and doing stuff with different characters in different time periods, we don't need those characters, obviously. But if you're going to then sell it as a Skywalker saga, which again was rushed. They were originally not saying 9 is the end of the whole thing until they brought JJ back on. Then they're like, well, actually, this ends it all. Like, this is... And now it seems like they're backtracking on that if they do 10, 11, 12.
And
And
there's even when you go into the article, there's that comment about, they view the first ones as the Old Testament, like comparing it to Bible
right,
terms.
right.
And they want this new era to be the New Testament, but they can't even agree behind the scenes on what that New Testament entails. And there was that other quote about, Star Wars is like a nostalgia factory or something like
Mhm.
that, and they don't know how to hit nostalgia anymore. And that was from a Disney insider, if like somebody inside Disney, if I recall the quote correctly. If not, forgive me. But man, I, I have no confidence, especially with this Ray movie having lost the writers. Like, we say, oh, it's good that they're going to have continuity and Kinberg's going to write all three. Well, what happens if the first one flops? Is it going to be the same exact thing? Like, is it just going to
Well,
be, oh, let's find somebody new because Kathleen Kennedy doesn't like and I'm not, don't mean to make this a rail on Kathleen Kennedy
uh-oh.
thing here. But is she going to pivot and say, oh, actually, we're going to bring somebody else in? Taika, let's make your movie now. It'll be the second one in this trilogy. Like, not really, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, they are throwing a lot, and here's the thing: I think they're throwing a lot at the wall here to see what sticks. I actually think Kinberg is actually in the best position possible, and I think his hiring Ron shows that they do want to make these movies. And the reason I say that is because this guy is the ultimate professional. He can get a movie made. Uh,
For better or worse, by the way, because he's
yeah,
had some fucking shitty movies.
he's had highs, he's had lows, right? But he's worked with Dave Filoni, who's kind of in charge of a lot of this stuff. He created Rebels with Dave Filoni. He's written Rebels episodes that are very damn good.
Yeah.
And so I like that he has Star Wars history.
Mhm.
Days of Futures Past is great, right?
Yeah.
Minus some of the other movies, but Days of Futures
Yeah.
Past is great.
Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, okay, I can't put a lot of the blame on screenwriters actually when it comes to bad movies a lot of the times, because it's like we don't know what type of deadline they were under. We don't know if they had somebody come in and like rip their script to shreds.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to tell, right? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Well, we actually do know in the case of Simon Kinberg that they basically forced him to make Dark Phoenix as the
yes,
wrap up of that, and just he kind of had to. So I'll give you that. There's definitely that aspect of it, and the fact that he does, like, you can't. I feel like it's very tough for somebody who isn't a fan of Star Wars to come in and make a Star Wars movie. I feel like, I
mm-hmm.
don't know. I almost feel like with superhero stuff, you get a little more like leeway, and I don't know why. I wish I
It's
could tell you
because
why.
superheroes are grounded in our reality in the sense
Mm,
of a lot of their world is our world. But I
mm,
think when you're dealing with a whole nother universe, it's like, uh, if they don't understand that, then there's problems, right?
mm.
But like, at least with superheroes, they can be like, it's a guy dressed as a bat. I get it. Like,
Yeah.
I'll make something, you know.
Mhm.
But when
Yeah.
it comes to like, oh, it's a guy up in space, and I have to know this creature's name or whatever, like,
Mhm.
it can be tougher. But I do
Mhm.
think that like so I'll also say I do think he knows what he's writing, okay? Because his pitch, he did have a pitch that he went to them and they said, "Let's make this." So I think that,
Okay.
and actually with the way that the dominoes are falling, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ray movie does fold into
Mm.
this. That they say, "You know what? Maybe that story wasn't as good, and if we can't nail it with like, I heard a rumor that Stephen Knight turned in like 4 scripts for it. Then you have however many
Mm.
Damon Lindelof wrote for it. If they
Yeah.
can't get it right after that many passes, it's like maybe we just don't do that one, and maybe we do. So actually, as
But
much
then
as
it
it
comes back to
sucks,
me, it comes back to why even announce it then?
because I think they really thought they had it. I do. I think they really thought they had it, and they wanted to announce something with that they, since they closed the book and signed the deal with Daisy. I think they're like,
Mm.
let's bring her out to Celebration. Everything's looking good, and then like you're getting the scripts back, and you're like, oh, this isn't it. Like, I'll say this as a writer, I have some amazing ideas. And then I sit down to write them and I'm like, this sucks. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? And I could kind of get that. Like if they're like, this pitch is just chef kiss. And then they get the script back and they're like, oh, no, not like that. Can you rewrite this? And then they get another copy and they're like,
Yeah.
this is no good too. Can we get a different guy to write this?
Yeah.
and then they just go in cycles.
Mm.
So I actually think with now that movie coming off of its date, and I'll say this too, as much of annoying as it is to see another Star Wars movie fall off the calendar, I was relieved because there is an issue that we had back in 2018 after Last Jedi. And 6 months later, Solo Star Wars movie comes out
Mm.
right before my wedding. My wife and I go see it the weekend that like 2 days before my wedding. And I loved it, of course, by the way. And then the returns for the movie, not great, right? And you can blame it on there's a few things. Are we ready for a Star Wars movie 6 months later? People point to the MCU and say, well, we get those like every 6 months. Like, what's the problem? Sometimes we get three in a year, every 3 months,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it
And
also was stacked up right against Endgame, which didn't help it as well.
exactly, right? It's in a summer with Endgame, which nobody saw, by the way, being $3 billion like movie.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
like we knew it would be big, but we didn't know it'd be
Mm.
that big, right?
Mm.
And so you have that. You have Alden Ehrenreich playing a version of Solo when a lot of people like Solo because of Harrison Ford, right? So you have some
Mm.
people immediately being like, not my Han Solo, and not going to see the movie,
Yeah.
right? Then you have just the production hell that movie was in with
Yeah.
Lord and Miller, and then having Ron Howard having to come in and save it, right? So there's a lot going against that movie. Plus, you also have The Last Jedi, which, again, I love, but very divisive, that turned people off of it. And they said,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I need a break from Star Wars.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, another Star Wars movie is coming out, and they're like, I'm not going to see that. I got burned last time.
Yeah.
And Bob Iger took from that is like, we can't have these movies every year anymore. We cannot have them even every 6 months, right? We got to spread these things out. And they take a break from movies after Rise of Skywalker. But then they don't make a movie during Bob Chapek's run, right? Bob Iger comes back. He's like, we got to get Star Wars back in theaters. And we're going to do 3 in a span of 2 years? What the hell? Didn't you just learn from 2018 that that's not what we're supposed to do? And they said, we're going to have one in May. We're going to have one in December. And then we're going to have one the following December or whatever. And I'm like, why? We already learned that might be too much too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you got the back, and like, it felt like they were kind of rushing out a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Rey movie started stumbling, right? So then they're like, oh, we got to move Mando and Grogu into theaters. And that movie and that crew, Jon Favreau knows what the hell he's doing. He's got that movie going. They're wrapping up later this month. And they have like a year and a half to post-produce this movie, right? So I'm relieved that we don't have a movie in December of that year, as bad as that might sound. But now that shapes up 2027 for like, all right, whichever one of these gets done first now, you're there. And James Mangold has wrapped up his Bob Dylan movie. It's releasing later this year. By all accounts, his next movie should be the Star Wars one. And there was rumors that they should start filming later next year. So if that's going, then I feel pretty good about that movie. And it just seems like maybe the Rey movie is the one that will then shift into this trilogy. And they just say, all right, you know what? We actually love, and they can spin this a different way. They can be like, we actually love Daisy so much, we're making 3 with her. And it won't be as bad. But I was relieved when you just sent me that text before we recorded.
That's fair. And if it plays out the way that you laid it out, I will be on board. My gripe is that I have no faith that it's going to play out that way. We have 8 years now of evidence that would indicate otherwise. And I feel like I'm sitting at the point where it's like, I have to be proven wrong on this at this point.
Right.
I've taken the bait too much with Star Wars, at least on the movie side, and I've gotten burnt, and I just can't do it again. Especially because, like, I feel like if there was one movie idea that you could not fuck up with this new batch. It was the Rey one, just because of all that prequel stuff. That
And
I
I
don't want to say the
think,
prequel stink, but that's kind of what it is in the general public sense.
but I think that is why they're almost in this state of
Mhm.
paralysis, right?
Yeah.
Of, is the script good? Do we like
Mhm.
this? We don't want to mess it up to where people hate the sequels even more, or
Yeah.
like we don't want to upset the people that do like those movies, right?
Yeah.
Because like by the time this movie comes out, the kids that grew up with Force Awakens are going to be older than 10 or more years older at that point, right? So you're looking at
Where we
12 or
were when the
13,
sequels came out.
right? So I can see why they feel like they really want to nail it. And from what Daisy was even saying is that like she's talked about like the new one or new ones. I feel like she said there would be an interesting development about her movie coming out soon, and then the
Mhm.
Kinberg news dropped, and she
Yeah.
liked the post. Somebody said I couldn't find her like on it. I don't know if she removed it, but
I don't even
Kinberg
think you can't see likes on Twitter
on
anymore, so that's
Instagram.
probably.
It was on
Oh,
Instagram.
okay. Okay.
Kinberg has acknowledged this, by the way. He has posted that he is doing this. So Lucasfilm hasn't, but he has. And apparently somebody said she had liked his post. So
Okay.
if that's true, that seems, and he was also a producer or a consultant on Force Awakens. So at least like he has some knowledge about the characters for
Mhm.
Rey and just Star Wars in general. He's worked with Dave Filoni. I feel like if I had to put a bet on any movie that actually gets released, it would be obviously Mando and Grogu, Dave Filoni's, and the Kinberg movies.
Mhm.
The ones I'd be a little bit more shaky on are Charmin Obaid Chinoy's and James Mangold's.
Mhm.
I think James Mangold's is probably going to happen, just from rumors that I've read that like people are like, oh, they're maybe going to gear up for production next year, and I wouldn't be
We
shocked if
haven't
that's
heard
the
that they've lost 14 writers, so it's already in a better pole
yeah yeah.
position than a lot of these other movies.
I think that one might be the 2027 December
Mhm.
at this
Yeah,
point.
that sounds right.
Because what we'd also have to think, the reason we haven't heard anything on Filoni's, as I'm assuming we're going to have to get Ahsoka season 2
Yeah.
done, which is
Yep.
filming next year for 2026, and then we'll probably have him start gearing up on filming in 2026, 2027 for his movie, and 2028 it probably comes out. Like that's my bet on the announced projects.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. And I just whatever they decide, man, I just hope they get it right with Daisy Ridley. Like
Mm-hmm.
that
Me
poor
too.
girl has been through so much as a member of this franchise. Like, and for her to finally be out, and then just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. And if it's just an even worse experience than the first time for her, in terms of maybe not with Force Awakens, because that was outside of the people who are just going to hate it because she's a woman lead. It
Right.
was well received. It did well, but the other two, like, that's where all the real like Mary Sue and all that stupid bullshit came from. So I just whatever they do, if this was the only way they could get it right, fine, but you better fucking get it right. And
Yeah.
that's where I am.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I
I will
wanted to
be more
just
positive about other things. I swear. I swear.
I just wanted to run through the list of movies that have been announced and the ones that never gonna happen. So you got the Rey movie, directed by Charmin Obaid Chinoy. That's what we've been talking about. Dawn of the Jedi, that's the Mangold movie. Filoni's movie, which is the rumored Thrawn Mando verse, right?
Mhm.
Donald Glover's Lando got moved to being a movie instead of a TV series. He's supposed to be writing it.
That
They've
was
said in this article it's still happening. We'll see.
not a chance.
Taika Waititi's movie was mentioned. Is that still happening?
That's dead. That's got to be dead too.
Especially after Love and Thunder, that's killed a
Yes.
lot of people's.
That was the nail in the coffin right there.
Yep.
When that movie totally bombed in the way that it did, they were like, all right, we like Taika Waititi, but this is when you let Taika Waititi be Taika Waititi too much, this is what you get. And it kind of made them, I think, kind of realize
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's not the director for Star Wars. And that's not to, he's a very distinct, very unique director, but I would probably agree in that camp. I don't think he's a Star Wars director, for me personally, at least.
How about Sean Levy?
Yeah, we heard about him having a movie.
Yeah.
I don't really know what's going on. I'm going to assume that one's dead as well, along with the Feige movie. I think the Taika, the Feige, and the Sean Levy, all three are probably got the axe at this point.
The Feige movie is really funny because that came from Bob Iger specifically saying this thing is happening, and they did a whole press release on StarWars.com. And then somebody asked Kathleen Kennedy, and she's like, "Oh, that was never a thing. That's not a thing." And it was, and I'm like, "No, that StarWars.com posted it. It was a thing." But I think she was kind of like, I was directed to do that, and I don't want to do that. And she won. I think she won at the end of the day.
Probably, yeah.
Especially once Marvel started slipping a bit for the casuals, and they were like, "Kevin, you got to get back full hog on the MCU right now.
You can't be splitting your time doing this while your current universe is in shambles." And credit to them, they have, with Deadpool and Captain America looks really promising. They have been able to right the ship after a really shaky few years. And hopefully Star Wars could do the same thing. I guess we'll see.
Rian Johnson trilogy. I just want to know when they're going to actually come out and say, you know what? We're not actually making it.
Not happening. Yeah.
Not actually happening. That's what I want.
They should honestly come out and we pretty much know, us who follow this stuff daily know that these movies are probably all dead, but it would probably do them a good service to just come out and say, "Hey guys, these are dead. This is only what we're working on here. Whether it's, we've reworked this Rey movie and we're going to do that, all the Dave and John stuff, and then this other trilogy, or just whatever it is, just kind of do some housekeeping a little bit." Because now everything's in disarray. We thought we kind of had an idea when they announced this new batch, but that's all been messed around with and stuff. So I almost feel like they do this on purpose at this point, just so they can have new things to talk about when cons pop up. It's like, okay, here's what we're doing now. And then a year passes and another celebration comes. All right, this is really what we're going to do now. And more time passes.
To be fair, a lot of those were announced outside of Celebration.
Sure.
Taika's, Feige's, all of those didn't get the Celebration treatment. And they've stopped announcing stuff like this. Actually, this, at least the Kinberg stuff, they haven't still acknowledged it. And I'm glad they haven't. They'll probably address it at Celebration, but don't
May,
April. I'm fine with them making deals and developing movies. I know that not all of these will probably get made just because of the movie business, but I'm glad they've stopped announcing them with StarWars.com stuff and being like, this one's happening. Like Taika's had a logo and everything.
Yeah. An ugly logo, but a logo.
And Rogue Squadron. Now they've said that this started developing again this year. So this is another one that has a possibility of coming back.
Maybe. I'm not holding my breath for that one.
Yeah, me neither.
Not even just to be cynical. It feels like one of those ones that it's kind of had a similar trajectory of like the Taika movie and stuff, where it's just kind of been there and just, it's dead in everything but an official announcement sort of thing.
You mentioned Feige's. They had the Benioff and Weiss movie series.
Oh, that's the one that they rushed the end of Game of Thrones to go put out.
And then Disney looked at Game of Thrones and said, "No, never mind. We're not doing this." And then, of course, TV show wise, Rangers of the New Republic was done due to Cara Dune's firing. Right? What's her real name? I forget. Gina Carano.
Gina Carano. Yeah, I actually forgot for a second there too.
All right, so we're gonna pivot over to Skeleton Crew.
Yes,
and like I mentioned, Andor is
positivity.
Next year.
Sorry,
Andor is next year, April 22nd or something, a couple days after Celebration, I think. So people are assuming they'll show the first 2 episodes at Celebration or whatever, like they've done in the past. So Yeah, but our next show here is Skeleton Crew coming up in like 3 weeks.
Mhm. Yeah, it's coming in hot, man. I'm excited for it. It's, you know, I kind of went and rewatched the trailers that we've gotten so far before we recorded tonight, just so it was kind of fresh in my mind. And it seems like it's going to be very intentionally corny, very much in the way that kind of like Goonies and Stranger Things are. It looks like a very fresh take on things, despite still feeling like the bones of Star Wars are there. I know we said the same thing about Acolyte, and it ended up being what it is, what it was. You know, kind of we were both kind of lukewarm on it, didn't hate it, didn't love it, but I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be. Let me think how to put it. I don't think it'll be as divisive as the Acolyte, and the Acolyte really shouldn't have been. The reasons that the Acolyte was divisive were very stupid, obviously, in terms of the same stuff that a lot of these projects are divisive over, that just should be a non-factor, when these things should just be judged on the quality of them, not, you know, who is cast in what role, and you know, the gender and the all that stuff. I don't think we'll get a lot of that from this show. I could be proven wrong, but I just think even the weirdest of weirdos out there would probably be like, all right, to go on my Twitter and go all day and just start shit talking these 9-year-old kids. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to be a pretty big loser. So I think at the very least, it'll be a less like a less annoying experience inside the fandom to get through. So I think it'll be great. I think it'll be a nice little, just a nice little fun condensed its own. You don't have to worry about what it's connecting to. You don't have to worry about. I don't even think we have to worry about if it's going to get a second season or anything. I think this is the definition of a one and done, just a fun little Star Wars story that they wanted to tell, and I think it's going to be great. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, they've mentioned, I believe, that this was developed as a one season show. We've heard that earlier this season, and that was incorrect when it came to the show that tried to push that narrative earlier this year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said, the Acolyte was divisive for the wrong reasons, but there was actually real reasons it was divisive as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was. I'm looking forward to the books that are coming out. God, they don't come out until like summer of next year for some reason.
Next year. Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? We have to wait a year after this to have a tie-in. But I'm looking forward to those for more character stuff. And look, I want to see a continuation of the story somehow, whether a book or a comic to clear up some stuff.
Yeah.
But the more I sit with it, I haven't watched it since, right? So obviously this could change with rewatches or whatever. But the more I sit with it, the less I like it, unfortunately, because it's like, the story aspect of it. I'm a big High Republic fan. There's a few things I felt like they didn't do justice, and that was Vernestra. And I understand. It's like, Ron, I now understand people's issues with The Last Jedi. Because people walked out of the movie like, not my Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, Luke would do that. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's how I am with Vernestra. But the issue was, Last Jedi showed us why Luke has gone down that path, right? They show Ben's point of view and they show Luke's point of view. In The Acolyte, it's just 100 years after we last saw Vernestra, and we have no clue why she's acting the way she is. That's the type of stuff that can be fixed with the ancillary materials, right?
Yep.
But like the fact that she was covering up stuff, she's not that type of Jedi in the older books.
Yeah.
And
then they give you kind of a, no pun intended, just a lukewarm explanation, very vague at the end. It was just,
and they kind of hint that maybe she abused Kymir with the whip.
Yeah,
like, I don't like that's weird. I don't
on the back. Yeah,
yeah. I'm like, what? This is Vernestra we're talking about. So I understand now that, but like, I at least in Last Jedi, you get the explanation of why Luke's like that. In this show, you didn't, and what it really felt like was, Leslie Headland wanted to make her show. They were like, all right, set it whenever we actually have the High Republic. So she dove into those books and she was like, oh, I like this character. I'm just going to throw them in here.
Yeah.
But, or maybe she already written a character. Then she's like, oh, I'll make that Vernestra and we'll, whatever. Right. Like, it could have gone anyway. But like at the end of the day, I sit with it and just wonder like who was I supposed to root for?
Yeah.
Uh why am I supposed to clap she's killing Master Soul? Because I wasn't. I'll tell you that
I
much. I
was.
wasn't clapping.
I was. But that was. But I also. I don't. I think that you are more just because I enjoyed seeing Soul, and I was kind of out on Saul, like basically from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. Once we kind of knew that he was up to some shit. But I think you're right. It was they tried to go too anti-hero, and it just ended up becoming like you don't really know who you like in the show. It was a show with an average to below average story that was visually stunning and acted
Yes.
incredibly well.
Oh yeah, the
That's basically
choreography was good, right? Like all that stuff. Yeah, I think because I had listened to another podcast recently where they said pretty much what I think bothered me about it, right, was in most Star Wars, right, we know clear good and bad, and we know the dark side of the Force is bad,
mhm.
right? Like it's Anakin kills kids, right? We know he's a
Yeah,
bad guy, right? Like,
yeah,
but like they wanted me to be cheering for the bad guy, somebody going into the dark side and succumbing to it when she was seen as a hero. I'm not ever going to root for somebody succumbing to the dark side. And I think that was part of it. Then you have like May being like, erase my memories and I'll take the fall or whatever. It's what?
yeah.
And then like it ends.
Man, if you want, you can do a villain show, and I haven't watched it, but I know you and Chris just watched it and covered it on the channel. You can do a villain show and do it from the villain's perspective and still have them be the clear one you're rooting against in the
Yes.
show. The
Penguin.
Penguin.
Yeah.
Penguin. It's possible to do without blurring the lines and being like, well, actually, you can see where she's coming from by joining the literal epitome of evil in the universe. It's like,
Right. And
it's
I
just
didn't
like, all
like,
right.
yeah, I didn't like the Yoda and the Plagueis stuff just because I felt like they were just thrown in for, they felt like the
Yeah.
Marvel, end credit scenes. But
Yeah, yeah.
so that was my issue with Star Wars this year on TV was the Acolyte. Like I said, first 5 episodes, great. They could have went anywhere after that. And I just didn't like the path they went.
Yep.
Now we get to Skeleton Crew. I'm very optimistic, right? Because this is set in a familiar setting. This is post Return of the Jedi. This is the pirates from Mandalorian season 3 are some of our antagonists. We got Jude Law, who is one of my favorite actors. So I'm feeling very optimistic. I love Stranger Things. I love that vibe that they seem to be going for. And to think that like we're probably going to have 8 episodes of just a fun adventure story sounds pretty fun to me. Like probably little stakes, not high stakes, and that's fine. Like I don't need, universe altering stakes right now.
It feels like the palate cleanser kind of project that we need.
Yes.
Like knowing that a much heavier Andor is coming up and the Acolyte was what it was and the sort of all of the craziness we just laid out with the movies of, I know we're not alone in sharing, or you were a little more positive, but I know I'm not alone in being a little doom and gloom as it pertains to the film side right now. So it just feels like the perfect time for a reset, fun, remind you why you love Star Wars kind of project.
Where I will be a little bit more doom and gloom is the TV shows in the sense of this might be it. Skeleton Crew and Andor and Ahsoka season 2. We don't have any word of any developing TV shows. They seem to be pivoting back to movies. Part of that is because of just the insane budgets, right? Like if you look at how much the Acolyte costs, you're like, what? Andor cost a lot too. Season 1 of Andor was very expensive. And like there was a reason why when they launched Disney Plus and they did Mando, it was a little bit more in budget because they had the volume. But then people started rejecting the volume for whatever reason. I still think it looks good.
Yeah.
People start rejecting that, and now they want everything to be on location again, and that costs money. And the budgets have ballooned.
What was Acolyte? 180 million?
It was actually more than that. It sounds like it was 200 to 250 is what I last saw, which is insane.
Goddamn. For a project that
Insane.
you're not even seeing any sort of box office return on. Like, you can talk about, oh,
That's
we
the
picked up
thing.
X amount of subscribers and did all this, and it's like, yeah, but like, yeah, when you compare it to the movies, it's just not even a low performing, like, Solo probably had a better return than most of these Disney Plus
Oh,
shows, even
probably. Yeah.
as disappointing as it was when you look at the final sort of trade off or whatever you want to call it. The loss gain net of it all.
Yeah. Well, that's why they also, I feel like, have started doing the physical media. It's
Mm-hmm.
very cheap to produce physical media, and they can charge out the ass for it like they are right now,
Yeah.
45 to $50 or whatever, right?
God,
Um and I'm a sucker that will buy it, and I'll buy the
man.
Acolyte, I'll buy them all. Like I have
Yeah.
to have them. So they're on my shelf. And
Enjoy your slop.
so I need to have them, so they'll be on my shelf, and uh you know, they can make a little bit more money back with it, because here's the thing, how much money are they making from me? I'm a lifetime Disney Plus subscriber pretty much.
Mhm.
Like I can't ever see myself canceling it
No.
because of what's on there.
Yeah.
And I need the new Marvel stuff, I need the new but at a certain point you're going to hit that maximum number of people that will stay subscribed. Now, of
Mhm.
course, they've started adding an ad, so they're going to make some money from that. But when you're putting in 250 or something for a show like She-Hulk or Acolyte, and then the viewership drops, they're not going to be eager to do another season of that. And Marvel is starting to rein it in. Agatha was very cheap and was a big hit. They need Disney, they need Star Wars to be able to find that balance, and maybe it'll take some
I
time
think they will.
to
Honestly, I
do it.
think
Yeah,
that Agatha, I think that as because it was so well received, even though I wasn't a big fan of the ending, I'll just be honest. I think they left a little too much open.
yeah,
But
fuck you. I know. Yeah.
but start to finish, no, that I am not knocking that show in the slightest outside of that. I loved it. Even though I was a little underwhelmed at the ending, didn't take anything away from it for me. One of my favorite Disney Plus shows, not just Marvel, period. So I think that now that they've seen that you can do that, you can make shows that are compelling on a budget that isn't gonna destroy you for months afterwards. I think that we could see that model. And again, like you mentioned with Mando, kind of what they did with the volume, and like I think we're gonna start going back to that a little bit. And I don't think it's just after Ahsoka season 2, it's just donezo. I do think that we will get more live action Star Wars. I just think the focus is right now for sure behind the scenes on getting all these movies at least started before they kind of start dipping their toe back in the Disney Plus thing, just because they have, like we said, like I said earlier, just biting off more than you can chew. I'm okay if they just say, all right, we're just going to focus on the movies, try to make these good, and then we'll circle back around to Disney Plus, 28, 29, whatever, what have you.
See, I wouldn't be shocked if, like, after Ahsoka, it's like animation for Disney
Yeah.
Plus, and
Mhm.
then they keep doing live action movies, just because the cost for animation is expensive, but not as expensive as doing the live action shows all the time. They already have the assets for, like, the engine they use for
Yeah.
like Clone Wars and Bad Batch and stuff. Like
Mhm.
they can just keep making those shows, probably higher graphics wise, like better animation, while also being relatively cheaper, because they already have some of those assets they're able to reuse or whatever. um I just worry that, like, after Ahsoka season 2, they're like, all right, the live action stuff, like, I wonder, like, do we get a Mando season 4 after the movie?
I
Because
don't
we're
think so.
also, I don't think so either. And then we're supposed to be getting the Filoni wrap up stuff, right? Like, that's supposedly what it is. Like, bringing in Ahsoka, bringing in
Mhm.
Mando, and all those characters together for a movie. All right, then what happens after that? Right? Like, that's
I
part of
think,
the
not to
question.
go too far into the future here, I think we're going to end up getting that Vader show at some point with
Mm,
Hayden. I don't think they're going to make it a movie. I think it'll be a show, again, a cheaper-ish show, maybe just more kind of smaller, focusing on Vader the character as
mm.
opposed to, these crazy set pieces and all that stuff. I think they do probably still have a plan to try to do that as sort of a little continuation of Obi-Wan. So yeah, I'm I don't want to say confident that the future is bright with Disney Plus shows as it pertains to Star Wars, but if I had to put my money in one basket right now, I think we're going to get that show at some point in the next 5 years, we'll say.
I really want a post Return of the Jedi animated series that can focus on Luke, Leia, Han, and
Yeah.
Ben and stuff, as we can like. That's what's missing right now. There's a big gap between 6 and 7 that needs to be filled, like the way Clone Wars filled between 2 and 3 and made us like the prequels even more by giving
Well,
some
that's
of
what
those
they're doing with Filoni stuff, right?
Right. But I mean, like, I don't know how far they're going to go with that, in the sense of, are they going to set up Kylo Ren stuff? Are they going to be showing up? Like, I would love to see Luke's Academy. They're probably not going to do a live action show of that, because look, the feedback on the de-aging or face swapping, AI voice change, all that kind of stuff has not been good for most people. I think it's been fine, but I don't know if they would do a whole show like that, or like try to fit them in the movie. So I would love like an animated series that can really fill those gaps in, more than like comics can, right? Like, there's comics around that stuff, but show us Luke building his temple in the animated series and all that. Like, I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that would be really fun and a good way to bring all of them back. You know, did we talk about Star Wars is nostalgia? It's a way to kind of get the best of both worlds without having to do all of that, all of the AI and the the facial de-aging and all that stuff, while still bringing the characters back. And it gives you more room to be able to do stuff, like, because animation is a lot easier in that regard. In terms of the set pieces and the things that would cost a shitload of money to do in live action, I almost feel like it would be better served than trying to, even if they were to recast, like if they were to do a Luke recast and probably not bringing back Alden Ehrenreich, but you get what I'm saying. I think it would probably be better served as a animated show than to attempt to do anything with Luke or anything like that live action going forward.
Right. Okay, so let me get your answer then. Let's just talk about state of Star Wars. We've talked it all out. There's TV shows coming up. There's movies that might or might not be happening. As we sit on November 15th, 2024, your vibe on the state of the franchise right now.
If I had to sum it up, I would say I have confidence in anything that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau want to do, and I have confidence in animation. I have confidence in Skeleton Crew. I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not the biggest Andor guy, so I can't really comment on that. But I am confident that it will do well and that it will satisfy fans of the show. But everything else behind the scenes, I'm not very confident in, and I just need to be proven otherwise. So I guess I would say there's a light in the darkness, but there's a lot of darkness that still needs to be done away with before I'm willing to say it's all roses, you know?
So I put up the poll on Twitter. I put options: strong, fine, could be better, weak. Fine was 60% of the vote. 20% was strong, 20% was weak. Nobody voted could be better.
It's funny because that's honestly what I would probably say. Could be better. When you take my opinion on the TV side and my opinion of the movie side and just kind of, it's like, yeah, it could be better. Like, that's probably the best way I would put it.
On Threads, somebody responded to me saying that I think Star Wars is in the fine category. This is Clone Force 97 who put this. There are things to fix, but their heart is usually in the right place. Though 8 and 9 set them back a bit. Mandalorian has been good. Bad Batch was excellent. The Tales miniseries was excellent. Obi-Wan was good. Rogue One is a top 3 Star Wars film of all time. Acolyte had issues that could have been fixed. Boba Fett was probably one of the biggest TV fails, but that's because they didn't focus enough on Boba. I said I agree with most of that.
Yeah, that was actually a very well thought out take. To be honest with you, I don't disagree with any of that, really.
Yep. And then somebody else, Craig, responded Rogue One is one of my favorites, as is Andor. I recommend a rewatch of Andor because once you figure out the characters and where they fit, the arching story is really good. I also really liked Obi-Wan, and I'm currently rewatching Rebels, which I love, and I will finish that off with a rewatch of Ahsoka.
Hmm.
Over on Instagram, we had I think it was Instagram. We had a response as well that said, I'd say it's fine. Want it more acolyte, crying face.
All right.
That's from Jedi Eero, who said that.
Oh, Eero. Yeah, Eero is my boy. He's cool. Yeah, we kind of laid out how we feel about the acolyte,
Yeah,
but I mean, he's not alone.
we do want more. Like I would love a
Yeah.
fleshed out second part of that, but
Mhm.
unfortunately the budget's not there. So make a book, make a
Yeah.
comic, do something
Mhm.
with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what people thought about the state of actually Chris responded on Blue Sky. Hold on. This is our
Oh,
buddy Chris. I'm gonna read his here real quick before I forget. Um Let me find it. I think it was on my personal and not on the podcast
okay.
one. Okay. Star Wars is fine. Okay, so like most people are saying fine here. It's still makes Disney a ton of money. The toxic fans don't ruin anything if you don't let them. Under all the noise is a very established franchise with a big world to keep expanding. He's looking forward to the Ray movie. Now, sorry, Chris.
See.
That
You gotta
got
keep
bumped off the
looking.
schedule now.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, no, I would mostly agree there too. I would probably not be quite as bullish on like everything's going to be fine, and they're still in a little bit of DEF CON mode right now, but it's not a total. It's not a total just doom and gloom everywhere. Like the aspects that I am doom and gloom on, I am very doom and gloom. But the ones that I'm not, I'm very confident in. So I get so I've given mine. We've heard the people give theirs. What
Oh
about
yeah.
you, Jordan?
So I had put on the poll. I was actually one of the votes for strong.
Okay.
As of where we sit today, uh, maybe that was a little too optimistic, right? But it's look, we got a movie coming out in 2026, right? Like that's the first thing we've had on the movie scale since 2019. It's been a while coming. We've been wondering when a new movie coming. That one is actually going well. It's being
Yeah,
like it's moving. So I feel pretty good about that. Even if nothing else happens, it's a Mandalorian and Grogu movie. Like that should be big, right? Like
that's
that
gonna be
should
good.
be big.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
So I feel good about that. Skeleton Crew, I'm really looking forward to it. Um, so I feel like it's strong there. The comics are doing a Battle of Jakku arc right now, which I'm going to dive into. But it's like throwing in characters from a whole bunch of stuff, and it's like, in it's 12 issues, but like 3 different arcs of 4. So they
Oh,
just
cool.
wrapped up like Insurgency Rising or whatever, and then they're doing another arc, and then they're doing another arc. I have the first 4 issues. I'm going to try to dive into them soon because I heard
Nice.
good things. The games, right? Like Jedi Survivors, one of my favorites.
Yeah,
I haven't been able to play Outlaws yet, but I have it on my Christmas list. Um,
heard some
uh,
mixed things about it.
yeah,
That's a Black Friday or for me as well. I'll pick it up
right.
and
Yeah, it's on my
talk.
Christmas list. We'll see if I get it. Um, I don't know. I feel pretty good about the state of the franchise, especially now. I feel, like I said, very optimistic about the Kinberg news because I feel like he will get those movies made, right? Like he's friends with, like he knows Filoni. He's created Rebels with him. He's got Star Wars pedigree. He makes movies, right? Like, yes, those movies can be wishy washy, right? Like on their thing, but like if they find the right directors for these movies, that'll elevate the script.
Yeah,
And I want to see these characters continue. I want to see if she has like a Obi-Wan role, that's cool. Like that means she's not going to be the main character, Rey, but we get to see whole new characters enter into this fray. We get to explore a timeline where now Palpatine is dead, unless if he somehow returned.
Oh God! Don't even jinx it. Don't even jinx it.
And that is what is so fun. I want to get to something else, right? Like I want to get to the next part of the story. So in all of that regard, I'm feeling pretty optimistic. Maybe I was a little strong with saying strong, but yesterday I was feeling pretty good. That's when I had set my vote before the Rey movie news happened, I guess. But like I said, I felt relieved about that anyway. So yeah, I feel pretty good. Feeling optimistic. The Blu-rays are coming out still. I'm getting my Blu-rays.
I mean, this wasn't, speaking of blue, this was a banner year just because the fact that we got blue milk in stores. So with that's
yes, and the cookies, the Oreos.
And the Oreos, yeah, the Oreos, yeah. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to have to adjust my thinking there now that we're really going to bring
Oreos? No, this is a pretty damn strong year, okay?
No, but this has been good, man. This has been a little part therapeutic, a little part kind of giving two different perspectives here, you know, in terms of how we feel about things, but it's been good. You know, it's like I said, it's been nice to just chop it up about kind of where things are in Star Wars right now. And regardless of how we both feel, we're both going to keep being fans for our entire lives because we love Star Wars and we are both hoping for the best. And that's basically where everybody should be right now.
Before we go, I wanted to share two fun little things to lighten the mood in case if it was a little darker. But all right, this was fun news that we shared, but George Lucas cut a bombshell Star Wars twist from The Phantom Menace, right? This Variety put out a thing about it. This was on Halloween. But it was Liam Neeson was originally going to play Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then it was going to be revealed that Qui-Gon, Ewan McGregor, takes his name. Yeah. And that's why he says, now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. We're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. What's your
Some
thoughts
things
on
are
this?
better left on the cutting room floor, and that is one of them, George. I'm glad you made that decision.
Yes, this was from a StarWars.com. Ian McCraig was a concept and storyboard artist who revealed, due to the 25th anniversary, that George Lucas was originally planning a bombshell twist for the movie, and that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were originally swapped, meaning Obi-Wan would have died, the real Obi-Wan, and then he would have taken his master's name and his quest, because he took on his master's quest, he would also take on his name as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, I'm glad they changed this because I feel like that would be very confusing for like, so what, Yoda is just like, I guess I have to call him Obi-Wan now. Like, what? A little too much twisty there.
And it would have just felt like a twist for the sake of having a twist in the movie. There's no actual reason for it. Like it doesn't change anything. It would solely just be to be like, oh, you thought you knew who these were. Gotcha. Like, you know, it's
right
like,
at the end, Ewan McGregor's like, no, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi.
No! Yeah.
And then in the next special edition, they put a deep fake Alec Guinness being like, no, I'm Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah. Like I said, some things better left on the cutting room floor. That was definitely one.
The last thing I want to share, I went to Men's Warehouse. I was getting fitted for a tux for my sister's wedding, which is coming up in January. And they started talking Star Wars. Now I'm wearing my Rogue One shirt, but they didn't see it at the time that they started talking Star Wars. So this is all kinds of stuff, right? And it's two workers just being like, hey, what's your favorite Star Wars character, right? And what's your favorite Star Wars character? And one of them said, who did the first guy say? It wasn't a real fan answer, okay? I'll say that. He was like,
Not
what's
like
that guy's name again? And he had to Google something. It's like, No, so sorry, dude. Then the other guy, they're like, what's your favorite character? And he says, Ben Quadraneros. And I had to do a double take. I'm like, what? And the other guy had no clue who Ben Quadraneros was. Well, he was like, is that one of the, I know that name. Where is that from?
It's like, you don't know that fucking name, dude.
I almost cut in. I almost cut in and been like, he's one of the pod racers in episode 1.
Pick up a comic, dude. Like, what the fuck?
Yes. And Ben
Oh,
Quadraneros
man.
is this guy's favorite character. And as I was leaving, I went up to them and I said, you really know your Star Wars. Ben Quadraneros is a name I've not heard in a long time. Right? So,
heard that name in a long time. Oh,
as
man.
a fun ode to Ben Quadraneros, he is our character of the week. His
Shout out, Ben.
his homeworld is called Tund. His species is a Toong, Toong. He goes by he, him pronouns. He's got yellow skin, orange eyes, and he was a pod racer who raced on the amateur circuits before entering the Bunta Eve Classic on the planet Tatooine in 32 BBY. He is unfortunately passed away. He loses the race, right?
Doesn't even get out of the gate, really.
Yeah. And that is most of what's known about Ben Quadraneros. I'm trying to see if there's any fun trivia about him, but not really.
No. One of the all-time Glub Shittos, though, I will say. One of the all-timers.
Yes. But yeah, I guess he did survive, right?
I don't. Am I misremembering? Does he? I thought he was the one who didn't even get out of the gate, and he's like smashing the. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this right now, but like for some reason I thought he was. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he does not get out of the gate, right? Yeah, I mean he races against a Bulba in the Clone Wars, so there you go. There's some fun.
Oh, cool! How did I miss
stuff.
That one?
Yeah, I don't think it's in the
Ben.
show. I think it's in some sort of ancillary material or something. But
he may not be C.O. Bibble when it comes to Star Wars side characters, but he still gets his respect.
No, I know. I almost went up to I almost answered them and been like, my favorite character is C.O. Bibble. And as C.O. Bibble says, you must contact me at podawakens.
Contact me at podawakens@gmail.com.
So that is C.O. Bibble, one of our favorites here on the Pod Awakens. So make sure you listen to him and contact us. podawakens@gmail.com. Tell us your state of Star Wars. Are you feeling pretty good? Or is it, threat level C.O. Bibble, where he's warning people not to come back, right? Let us know that. But yeah, that's about it. So, like I said, Tales of the Jedi Season 1 discussion with my friend Logan, his first time watching it. I just rewatched them earlier this week. Episodes 2 through 4 are absolute bangers. Can't wait to discuss those. And that'll be coming later this month before Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew has a 2-episode premiere on December 3rd, which is a Tuesday. I guess they're doing the 9 p.m.
I would assume so. Yeah.
And we'll be doing those weekly discussions for like 7 weeks, right? Like, so what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. That's right before I leave for my sister's wedding, which then I will be out of town for. And the Bad Batch binge will start dropping probably around the 24th, 31st of January throughout the year as we build up to Andor Season 2 with Road to Andor Season 2. So make sure you check that out as well. I'm looking for guests for that, so I'm going to be probably hitting up some of the people that were on previously or whoever wants to be on discussing the 5 arcs, I think it is. But yeah, that's it. At Pod Awakens on all of our social medias. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time.
Hello there.
You know what I've come for. This is the way.